Sorry. Chapter 19. The restaurant was very lively. In a narrow room were 2 rows of tables, all very close together. The walls were covered with crazy pictures, paintings, posters, and the waiters were all very jolly. They seemed to know the very helpful customer too. Mr. Poonlop saw the menu written on a blackboard in French, which made him slightly worried. "I hope you are not slightly worried," said the very helpful customer. "I am a very helpful customer, so I can help you to understand the menu." "Merci," said Mr. Poonlop in polite French. "I hoped you would. But what really worries me is that I feel silly calling you a very helpful customer all the time. I don't know your name." "Ah, I see," said the very helpful customer. "Unfortunately, I do not have a name. Because your author was in a hurry to write somebody to help you in the cafe, he did not find time to give me one. I do not even know what I look like." Mr. Poonlop and Angelique laughed. So did the people in the restaurant. For a while, everybody was telling the very helpful customer what he looked like, but this didn't help him much as they all had different ideas. And they all told him in French, which didn't help Mr. Poonlop at all. Of course, if I don't tell you, it's up to you what he looks like, isn't it? But it still didn't help Mr. Poonlop with what to call him. "Well, since I don't yet have a name," said the very helpful customer, "you can call me whatever you like." "What French names do you know, Mr. Poonlop?" Mr. Poonlop replied, "I can't think of any myself." But in the noise of the restaurant, the very helpful customer couldn't hear him clearly. He thought Mr. Poonlop had said, "I can't think of many Marcel." So they decided that his name could be Marcel. Everybody in the restaurant thought this was excellent, and they all stood up and shouted, "Bonsoir, Marcel," and drank a toast to him. No, they didn't drink slices of toast. They drank their wine to show they were pleased for him. Come to think of it, that sounds a bit silly, but it's what people do. Eating toast is never done as a sign of respect or congratulations, but I don't know why. Anyway, Mr. Poonlop and his new friends settled down and had a big meal with lots of chips and salad and drinks. Everybody in the restaurant was very merry, and soon they all knew who Petit Monsieur Poonlop was and wished him luck getting back to England. They all had wonderful ideas for where he should go on his 7th holiday too. The trouble was that all their ideas for holidays were different too, so Mr. Poonlop was just as confused as when he'd left the travel agent that morning. After his meal, Mr. Poonlop felt very full and very tired, but the people kept singing jolly songs. And no, not songs about buses or bottles. These were in French, so I don't know what they were about, but there were a lot of them. There was even one especially for Marcel, called the Marseillaise. If you're unlucky, somebody will explain that terrible joke to you. By now, Mr. Poonlop was very keen to go back to his hotel and sleep, so Marcel asked a waiter for the bill. "Bill is Monsieur Poonlop's neighbour, monsieur," said the waiter. "I cannot get him for you." The very helpful customer explained that he wanted to pay for the food. The waiter said he knew and was only joking. He also said there was no need to pay because Trégator Trips had already paid for Mr. Poonlop, and all the other customers wanted to pay for his new friends. They were all so grateful. Angelique said she was very glad she had met Monsieur Poonlop and hoped her author would write such nice adventures for her. Marcel said maybe there was a book in Switzerland called Angelique's Best Holiday. Angelique kissed Mr. Poonlop and made him blush again, and then she kissed Marcel for his nice idea. The 3 of them tried to say thank you to the other customers, but every time they started to speak, everybody clapped and cheered. I think they might have wanted to avoid boring speeches. So Mr. Poonlop and his friends just bowed a few times and went out into the night. Though he'd had an enjoyable evening, Mr. Poonlop was very tired. And even though he now had a name, Marcel was still very helpful. So he insisted on taking Angelique and Mr. Poonlop to their hotels in a taxi. On the way, they passed all sorts of interesting things and places and people, but they were too sleepy to take much notice. You're probably sleepy too by now, so we can say good night to Mr. Poonlop as he goes to bed. We'll see him at breakfast very soon. In chapter 20. The hooting of cars and lots of banging told Mr. Poonlop it was a busy day in Paris. So little Mr. Poonlop got out of his hotel bed and got ready to go downstairs for breakfast. At least he didn't have to make his own, and he could have a shower without having to go into an airing cupboard. But I don't think he was feeling very grateful. He was just hoping he could go back home soon. When he got to the hotel dining room, he found Fleur de Mal from Tréguier Trips waiting for him. A waiter asked if he would prefer French croissants or English toast, which they promised not to burn. But Mr. Poonlop was not very hungry after his big meal last night, so he just had a slice of melon and a cup of coffee. Fleur told him he should be able to return home in the afternoon. "We have arranged for you to join in a coach of French dairy farmers who are going to England to laugh at your cheeses." Mr. Poonlop was very fond of English cheese, but he was too polite to say anything. He hoped I wouldn't either, because he was keen to get home to start planning his 7th holiday. "I know you must be keen to get home to start planning your 7th holiday," said Fleur, "but I hope you will have a nice morning in Paris. I would suggest you to go on the River Seine, which is very interesting. There are many boat trips, and your envelope has a free ticket for any you might choose." Just then Mr. Poonlop heard a strange rumbling noise. It was getting louder and louder. Other people eating their breakfast began to look around. They also began to look worried as the floor was beginning to shake. All of a sudden Mr. Poonlop heard a scream, and he knew what was coming.
"It's him! It's the man who lives under the coach. Nobody eat the cornflakes, he's poisoned the milk."
"Hello, Mr. Poonlop," said the secretary of the Little Old Ladies Association, who had all just come noisily into the room for their breakfast. "Did you have a nice night? We had a lovely time. Don't worry about Emily, she drank a bit too much hot chocolate. We went to a lovely show and we stayed out till 9:30, but that's only 8:30 in England, or is it 10:30? I can never remember, but anyway, we're on holiday, so..." I don't need to write any more about Mr. Poonlop's breakfast, do I? Let's go and see what happened when he got to the river. The sun was shining brightly on the water when little Mr. Poonlop arrived back at the big cathedral where he'd met Marcel the night before. What? Yes, he was very polite to the ladies and wished them a pleasant journey, but he's at the river now. There were quite a few different boat trips to go on, and it was quite hard to decide which... What? Yes, he was very polite to the ladies and wished them a pleasant journey. I've told you that. You're confusing me. Look, of course he was nice to Fleur too, and he thanked her very much for her help. As I've said it before, everybody in this book is nice, even the farmers who want to laugh at English cheeses. I just thought you'd get bored by all the goodbyes and stuff, so we skipped all that. Now, where were we? Oh yes, while I was explaining all that to you, Mr. Poonlop had missed the gâteau bateau, which means cake boat, but that was probably a good thing, as he wasn't really hungry yet. He still had time to catch the chateau bateau, which went to some castles, but they seemed to be far away, and he wanted to be back in time for the cheese coach, and he didn't like the sound of the splatteau bateau one bit. In fact, he thought he should avoid any boats with silly names. I think he thought they might be things I'd made up. Sometimes I don't think he trusts me. He decided the best idea would be go on a tour named after the river itself, so he showed his special token to the crew member of a nice, normal-looking boat with big windows and comfy seats. "Ah oui, le petit Monsieur Poonlop," said the man. "Please welcome on board our little ship. Boop, boop." The man seemed rather jolly, but a bit odd. Mr. Poonlop was a bit worried, but as the man had eaten half his ticket and gone yum yum, he decided he might as well get on the boat. He sat down to wait for the trip to begin. The boat was due to sail at the beginning of chapter 21, which was lucky, as it meant he didn't have long to wait. Chapter 21. As soon as the chapter began, the boat pulled away from the riverbank and set off downstream. It was only slightly worrying that the boat was going backwards and kept bumping into things, but Mr. Poonlop assumed it would turn round soon enough. Then a voice started to say something in French. Mr. Poonlop didn't understand any of it, and neither did I, but then the message was repeated in English, and he didn't understand much of that either. "Lady and gentle things, please welcome on this leaky bucket," it began. "For your own happiness and long life, notice how we are for safeness. No rabbits must be called Daniel on the outside seats, and the burning of newspapers is not allowed in any case. When I tell you about the city, it is to enjoy your tripping. I will tell you it all in French, Ingle and Germish, so listen carefully for your tongue." Mr. Poonlop didn't know whether to laugh or jump off the boat into the river, but he decided he should just relax and look at the view. He liked all the old buildings and the tree-lined streets, and it was more peaceful away from the busy traffic, except when the boat hit a wall and made everyone jump. "On your left is the right bank, and on your right is the famous left bank," said the loudspeaker. "And the bit we have just hit is the island in the middle called the island of the city. Everybody who lives there is called Jacques, and by law must change their socks 3 times a day. Now your captain will turn the boat around and go forward. On your right is now the right bank, and on your left is the famous left bank, where live many famous artists, and which is famous for making teddy bears." Mr. Poon19 thought all this sounded very strange, especially when the man's voice started singing strange songs in a high-pitched voice and going poop poop or shouting zoot alors. He asked the passenger next to him if this was normal, but then suddenly realised he was talking to a stuffed chimpanzee in a top hat. So he tapped on the shoulder of the person in front and asked if he spoke English. "Ingle? Yes," said the passenger, and when he turned round and said, "Can I be helping?" Mr. Poon19 could see he was bearing a big red clown's nose. Mr. Poon19 was taken aback by this. In fact, he was taken 3 rows back, so he had to walk back to his seat, muttering about stupid authors who do silly things at difficult times. Is all this normal on a tour of the Seine?" he nervously asked the man with the red nose. No, diddly no," said the man in a really deep voice, "but you have come on a tour of the insane." "Oh dear," said Mr. Poon19, "that sounds rather ridiculous." It is," said the man. In fact, he kept saying it until the young woman next to him broke an egg on his head to shut him up. "I must apologise for my father," she said. "There was no need," Mr. Poon19 assured her, "and you did not have to do that to him on my account." "Do you have an account?" asked the woman. "How do you intend to pay?" No, I just meant you did not have to break an egg on your father for my sake." "No, that is all right, because this is not my father. I am apologising for my father who has missed the boat. I do not know this man at all," and she started laughing. "Let me explain," said the man with the red nose and eggy hair. "It is a very bad joke, this insane tour, but it is more fun. Many people get bored with being told the Eiffel Tower is 320 metres high and the lifts are safe, or that the Cathedral of Notre Dame was built in 1330. On these tours what they tell you is very silly and utter rubbish, but the buildings and the bridges look just as good. Sadly though, because the captain is a bit crazy, we do bump into a lot of oof." He did not mean to say a lot of oof, but as he was talking, the boat hit another bridge. "And over there," said the captain, "you can see Petit Monsieur Poon19 from England, who is in Paris by mistake." And everybody on the boat waved to a confused man on the bank. Mr. Poon19 knew the captain had got it wrong, because the man on the bank did not look anything like him. Just then a woman in a bright green bikini and swimming goggles came round checking that all the tickets had been half eaten. So Mr. Poon19 told her about the captain's mistake. "Oh oui, I know," she said. "He says this every day when we pass this place. Sometimes the person, he wave back. Maybe one day the captain is right." Mr. Poon19 nearly told her that he was the real Mr. Poon19, because he was. But then he thought they might do something really embarrassing if they knew. Luckily, the woman didn't ask how he knew the captain was wrong on that particular day. She just went on checking tickets and making a loud flapping noise with the flippers on her feet.